A 14-year-old girl disappears from her Long Island home, only to be found a month later, apparently being held captive on a boat in a nearby marina. And that's not even the most shocking part of this story. The girl's father is the one who rescued her because of an anonymous tip he received. He's the one who breaks down the door to the boat and comes to her rescue. Now, investigators have already arrested the man who owned the boat, who allegedly planned to sail with this young girl down to the Carolinas. But now, a new development in this case. A separate Long Island man has been charged in connection to her disappearance. But how do these two suspects connect? Well, let's start at the very beginning. The girl who went missing was 14-year-old Emma Ray Gervasi. Emma Ray was last seen on December 9th in the driveway of her East Patchogue home. Now, there are a couple of reports of what happened here. Her dad initially said that Emma Ray went outside to get something and then was taken. But there were also some reports that Emma Ray may have met someone online and she willingly got into that vehicle. Now, her father, Frank Gervasi, plays a pretty big role in this case. He addressed all of these accusations in a video he posted to Facebook.
So can we just leave the stupid comments off the page that, you know, my daughter's a runaway and things like that? She may have left the house with a stupid thought. What happened to her in this really bad world we live in is what we're talking about here. Trafficking is a huge problem across the world. It's a very big problem on Long Island, and I stress that parents should keep an eye on their children. Keep an eye on your little girls, even your boys, okay? Because these people are predators and they will stop at nothing to get to your kids.
So Emma Ray's dad says she could have gotten into the car willingly, but just as a naive teenager. You also heard him mention sex trafficking. He's been super outspoken about that. More on that later. Now, before Emma Ray's disappearance, her father said she had a history with drug abuse. And at the time she went missing, she was actually wearing a GPS ankle bracelet. But according to him, Emma Ray's bracelet was cut off by the people who picked her up at the end of her driveway. So all that happened on December 9th, and Emma Ray reappeared just the next day on the 10th. She was seen in security camera video knocking on doors at a motel in Bohemia, New York, which is not too far from her home. But by the time anyone got word of this, Emma Ray had disappeared once again. Her dad says after this, Emma Ray was just wandering around aimlessly. We, the public, don't know much more about where Emma Ray was for the next few weeks or who exactly she was with. It's possible that investigators know some more about this time frame, but that hasn't really been released to the public yet. What we do know about this time, though, is that Frank Gervasi was still looking for his daughter. He made flyers, put out a reward, and made update videos on his Facebook asking for tips to find Emma Ray. And finally, that paid off.
Today is day 27, and I proudly am very happy to tell you guys that Emma Ray was found yesterday.
He says an anonymous tip led to Emma Ray's rescue.
It was those social media videos and the flyers that helped me to get an anonymous tip yesterday. And I want to thank that person on this video, I'm not going to mention her name, for coming forward and giving me an information about my daughter. And the phone call that I received was that she was on a boat, an islip. I didn't want to believe at the time. I did follow that up on my own. I drove down there. The lady who gave me the tip was afraid to go in the boat, believed to be with some dangerous people, etc. I still wasn't sure if it was a legit lead or not. I did bust into the boat and recover my daughter. I did clear the boat. There was nobody else on the boat at the time when I got there. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know who was inside at the time as the curtains were drawn on the boat. That being said, she's safe and alive. And I believe it was persistency that helped bring her home.
All of that happened on January 3rd, when Emma Ray was apparently found on a boat docked at the Whitecap Marina in Islip. We now know that boat belonged to 64-year-old Francis Buckheit, who was staying on the boat at the time of Emma Ray's rescue. He's also the first suspect who was arrested in this case.
There is definitely one guy in custody already for her disappearance. It'll be on the news tonight. It's a man by the name of Francis Buckheit. It's from Islip. And there's probably a lot more going on.
Buckheit was apparently planning to take Emma Ray away from New York, sailing with her down to the Carolinas. But before that could happen, he was indicted by a grand jury on charges of kidnapping and endangering the welfare of a child. He's also been charged with a DUI. He's pleaded not guilty to those charges and maintains his innocence. Meanwhile, his boat has been impounded by police as the investigation continued. Emma Ray's father noted that while Buckheit wasn't there when he rescued Emma Ray, she was still being held on the boat against her will.
A lot of confusion, a lot of dumb comments I'm reading that Emma could have just left on her own will. Completely incorrect. Emma was being held against her will. She was not allowed to leave the boat unless she was escorted by somebody. And she was being forced to do things that a 14-year-old girl shouldn't have to do. So I do believe this is sex trafficking, and it's being looked into.
And that leads to the next arrest in this case, 47-year-old Bunnis Knight, who's been charged with second-degree rape, endangering the welfare of a child, and 3 counts of criminal sale of a controlled substance, which we now know was cocaine. Investigators now say Emma Ray was at Knight's home just 1 day before she was rescued. His home is in Copag, New York, just 20 minutes from Islip, where Emma Ray was later rescued. Now, investigators used security camera and doorbell footage from Knight's neighbors to identify him and get probable cause for his arrest. Knight pleaded not guilty to his charges and has since been released on bonds. Indictments for both Knight and Buckheit are still sealed, so right now it's unclear whether they worked together or how they were involved with each other. Now, all that means we still have a lot of questions about this case. And for that, I'm going to bring in former NYPD detective Tom Smith. And Tom, we can talk about the start of the case and all that led up to Emma Ray being found, but I wanted to start with the newest information that a second suspect has been arrested. Why do you think there was a lapse between the first arrest and this second one?
Well, investigations like this take time and they're fluid. So they're always moving and there's a lot to go through from social media accounts, from surveillance tapes, from interviews of other witnesses or friends. So, and on top of the first person that they arrested. So there's a lot of movement that goes on and you want to be right. You want to make sure you get the right people. So sometimes it does take a little bit more time to get everyone involved, but thankfully, and hopefully these two are responsible and that's it.
And there was a long time period that she was missing. So to your point, going through evidence and all of that could take some time because there is likely a lot of it. So let's go back to the very start because this case is so bizarre and interesting. It begins with Emma Ray at the end of her driveway getting into a vehicle. And some of the reports I've seen were that she met someone online and then got in the car. We're still kind of hazy a little bit on this, but I immediately went back to cybersecurity and the warnings of talking with people you don't know online. Can you just talk a bit about that?
Oh, it's their gateway. The bad guys know that, and that's their intro, their gateway, because you're behind the screen, you're behind the keyboard. You can act like anyone you want. And now in the introducing of AI in the world, you can become somebody else. It's really, really scary of what's going on. And the monitoring of that needs to kind of get a better handle, law enforcement wise, but parenting. Parents need to understand what every child in their household is doing, who they're talking to, what apps they have, what's going on with them. That's essential. And that's where you kind of cut into this problem and this epidemic going on of trafficking in this country.
Just working in both of our lines of work, we've seen a lot of instances where young people are talking online, meet up with someone, and things go way wrong. So not putting the blame on Emma Ray at all for chatting online. There are some pretty bad people out there. So it's just something to think about. Human trafficking is another thing that you brought up. And this is something Emma Ray's dad has been talking a lot about. He believes human trafficking was involved. Down the line, we'll have a rape case. Is this something that's super prevalent, maybe more prevalent than any of us realize?
Oh, it's very prevalent in this country right now, and it's scary. And the process of it does take time. The grooming process is so intense and so, behind the scenes that the victims don't even realize that they're being groomed because these people are experts in what they're doing. So they create it in a way that's comfortable for the victim. So, like I said, a lot of times they don't even realize what's going on until it's too late, from accolades to, hey, I can get you this job, I can bring you to this store and buy you this. It's so at a low level, but it's so impactful to victims that, like I said, a lot of times they don't even realize what's going on, and by the time they figure it out, they're already in that really dark world.
The grooming is so scary, especially when these predators are targeting young kids. This girl is 14 years old. What we have to remember about this story, it's just incredible that they can do this. Absolutely disgusting. But talking about the grooming and when she was taken, what was going on, we don't know exactly all that happened. She was gone for almost a month, and a lot of the time, we don't know. It hasn't been released to the public. But we do know that she has a history with drug use. And her dad has come out and said he believes that she was drugged during all of this. Do you think that's likely too, that she may have been drugged or forced to use some of these drugs?
Well, sure. And again, you were going back to the grooming process. I guarantee you that person knew that. So that's an entry into her world. Hey, I can get this for you. I can get this for you. I've done the same thing as you. So that is all inviting information to make her feel comfortable. And wow, this person, not looking at a grooming part, this person can be a friend because they understand everything that I went through or I'm going through now, and that's what they key on. And that's why it's so dangerous when it comes to these predators and what the availability is to them with information people put out there online and on chat rooms and social media and all that. They just gravitate to it and you become a victim really fast.
You know what's extra scary about this too is that at the time she was last seen in early December, Emma Ray had an ankle bracelet, like one of those GPS trackers. And her dad says that whoever took her removed this completely. So they weren't able to look up and make sure and see where she was. They took it off. They did not want to be found. I mean, does that show some major intent that they were hoping to keep her hidden?
Oh, sure. And it even goes even further than that, Sierra. You're talking about social media and going back in time into her, digital footprint. That's a conversation that took place before that car showed up to her house. That is not a, hey, look what I got on my ankle. Can I get it off? That was already talked about and spoken about on, a communication that took place between this individual who picked her up and her. And that's what I mean by understanding what your kids are doing and who they're talking to, because I guarantee you that was spoken about before that person arrived at the house.
And talking about parenting in relation to all of this, Emma Ray's dad, Frank Gervasi, has been so outspoken in all of this. And like any concerned parent, he was sounding the alarm after she went missing, putting up missing posters, posts on social media. He would make videos asking for tips or giving updates. And eventually that's apparently what led to her rescue, is someone came forward with an anonymous tip that led to this boat rescue. So I want to talk about this anonymous tip. We don't know who it was, we don't know many details. I'm wondering if police may know, if Frank may have told the police about it, or what would that look like? It's a little fuzzy right now.
Yeah, it is weird that the tip came directly to the father and then he didn't pass it on to the police, which is a little odd, and it's going to be a matter of questioning him about that tip. But do the police know right now? They may, but here's why it may not be going out. For all we know, there could be other people involved in this, that you don't want to let the cat out of the bag. You don't want to give a heads up onto the investigation or who else they're looking at. So that person providing that tip to the father may know a lot more about this case, or anyone else that's involved. So not putting it out there to the public is probably a good investigative tool at this moment.
And I do wonder too if the person who, this is speculating, but if the person who gave the tip had been involved too and would fear for his or her safety or some sort of retaliation. Is that something we see?
Oh, sure. That could have been, part of a deal, that was made, or someone that, the father knows, that may have been, into that world, or knows, the particulars about this world, who was able to track her down, or get other information that maybe the police couldn't get into, groups, individuals, or whatever. So listen, the good thing about it is the tip paid off, and they got her, So all the particulars about the surroundings of it or how it happened are what they are. The important thing is he got his daughter back safely.
And that part is almost like a movie. I'm picturing like Liam Neeson in Taken or something, because this dad rushes to the boat in the Islip Marina there, and he finds his daughter on the boat and rescues her. Amazing story that she is found safe. She is alive. However, it's a bit wild to me that he went in there alone. Just thinking about myself doing this, I would be terrified. I would be like, I need the police to go in. You don't know what's on the other side of the door. I can understand that he was very nervous about his daughter, but is that dangerous, him just rushing right in there?
It is dangerous, but I can completely understand. You get that tip, your daughter's missing for a month. You don't know where she is. Someone's telling you she's at a location. I can see myself, getting in the car doing 100 miles an hour, and we'll figure it all out later. And I'll tell everyone later on. That I can understand totally. Is it the safest thing to do? No, but I do understand that occurring for sure.
To your point, I can picture my dad doing something just like that too. I have not been in this experience, but for the parents who have a child who's missing, I can understand the adrenaline and rushing in there. This boat led us to the first suspect who was arrested because he actually owned the boat and had been staying on it, Francis Buckheit. And he's faced a couple of charges, pleaded not guilty, all of that. One of the charges is kidnapping, which makes sense to me. And his attorney has been outspoken and says there's no evidence that Emma Ray was staying there against her will. To which I have to question, this is a 14-year-old girl and it's not her parent or guardian. I mean, can she even give consent to that? It seems to me like she would be held against her will just with that.
100%. She does have the capability of making that decision. That is completely the law. He was charged with kidnapping, and that's not going to go away because of her age, because of where she was. You can determine being held on a boat, you are not free to leave. She's not going to know where she is. So all of that is lawyer talk, which is going to occur. He's going to represent his client. I get that, as a former detective, but in the eyes of the law, I see that charge sticking.
Something else about this first suspect is we know that it was a boat, and there has been word that he was planning to take Emma Ray down to the Carolinas. So I don't know what that would be, crossing state lines, going into international waters, depending on which route he would take. And that's obviously a next step up, showing to take her completely away from where she was. Thankfully, this didn't happen, but do you think this is something that investigators are going to look into?
Oh, without a doubt. Because listen, a lot of times with the human trafficking part, there are many more tentacles to the human trafficking other than two people. There's context, there's why you go into Carolinas, who's down there that who's down there that has a whole other organization going on with trafficking that can really hide this young girl in the weeds of that, web of darkness. So a lot of times there's a lot more involved with this than just two people, and I'm sure they'll get to the bottom of that.
I like what you said there, the web of darkness, because it does seem like the more we learn about this case, the more disturbing it is. And that leads to our newest piece of information that a second person was arrested. Bunnis Knight, 47 years old, also lived in Long Island. And according to prosecutors, he allegedly raped Emma Ray the day before she was rescued from her father. And the big question mark is, does this second suspect have any connection to the first suspect? I mean, there's a 24-hour gap between all of this. I'm thinking they may be connected, but we don't know for sure. What does your gut say?
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say yes. But here's the thing about investigations. You don't know, they're not gonna let out on how any of their networking happens. Was she propped up on a website, on a dark website? Was there people who are in that world who got the word out where she was? So like I said before, this is a really, really web of crime that goes on when it comes to trafficking. And it's pulling one piece apart at a time, kind of like peeling an onion apart. and getting each layer of this bad, this horrible situation that children and women and men are into. So I don't see this being wrapped up very quickly. I think there's going to be a lot more to this than we see right now.
And we know that the way he was tracked down or confirmed of his identity is that investigators spoke with the neighbors around Knight's home and they used their security cameras, so the Ring or all of that, their doorbell footage to actually check in on him, which is a great tactic that we talk about in a lot of our cases. So we have that. And I wonder too if investigators were looking through his search history, his phone conversation, things like that.
Name it. Name it, they looked at it. His social medias, his searches, his digital footprint, his coming and goings on surveillance cameras, anything and everything. Because, like I said, investigators are gonna know and think he ain't the brains of this. Who else is involved with him and the first suspect that was arrested? So to really deep dive into all his communications is gonna be vital in this.
And there could be more people involved in this too, which is just so scary. Really interesting case here. Glad that Emma Ray was found safe, and her dad does say that she's in treatment now and secure. Tom Smith, thanks for coming on and talking to us about this case and giving us a closer look at the investigation.
Well, thank you for having me and bringing attention to a really, really scary subject that isn't going away anytime soon. But the more stories like this, Sierra, maybe we can get ahead of this.
Let's end on a more positive note. Here's Emma Ray's dad describing her rescue.
The joy that comes over you when you find your child is a feeling that only a parent that has gone through this would understand. Of this elation, like God gave me a gift yesterday, and I was starting to lose hope. Actually, I woke up yesterday. I wanted to give up. I wanted to die. I just didn't know where my little girl was. And so I appreciate all the support from everybody, and having her safe in my arms was just the most amazing feeling in the world.
According to her dad, Emma Ray is now safe and in treatment. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.